Happy New Year, everyone. I don't have any noise blowers or hats or anything, but Happy New Year to everyone. I can't believe it's 2023 already. And hoping that you enjoyed the end of 2022 and that you're excited and eager to cook healthy and beautiful and delicious food. I'm Char Nolan. I'm one of the chef instructors here at Rouxbe. Today, my producer is Patrick, so it's always nice to work with Patrick. And we have so many questions that I'm just going to sort of jump into things to see how we can learn from one another. So thanks so much. Our first question is from Toki. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And Toby wants to know if there are any tips on cooking for one, reducing recipes and reducing food waste. So the first thing I want to say, Toki, is that you can cut a recipe in half. If you're doing an assignment, that might be an important piece of information to put into your summary so that when we look at the picture of the mise en place, we know that there are half of the ingredients because you are cooking a smaller recipe. In terms of reducing food waste, there is no such thing as food waste. In the sense that if you are peeling vegetables, you're going to save those vegetable skins to use in a stock or something like that, or you can create a sauce. In our Waste Not Cooking course, there's a lot of interesting information about how to reuse food so that we can optimize the length of food and not having food waste. But cut the recipe in half and then use good food storage techniques. If you're going to store something in the refrigerator, you're going to put it into an airtight container. Ideally, you're going to label what's in it, and then you're going to label the date that it was made. It should be kept in the back of the refrigerator, in the back of the refrigerator and no more than 5 days. If you're going to freeze something, depending upon what it is, it has a 3 to 6 month shelf life in your freezer. But freezing is a really good way to do things. And I have a lot of show and tell up here today. These little silicone containers are wonderful for making small amounts of food, or if you're making a sauce or something like that, or you have a vegetable stock, you can make stock here. I often use a little cube of stock just to add flavor to a dish without having to purchase a store-made stock or having to think, oh gosh, I'm going to have to use all of this up right now. So these little freezer silicone things, this is made by a company called Kitsch. I have them in many different colors and sizes. And interestingly, a friend just had a baby and I bought her pink ones. She had a little girl, and because she's going to be a mom who's going to make her own baby food. So that's the answer to the question. Welcome aboard, Toki. It's nice to have you here today. Doris had a very similar question. She's single, and can recipes be adjusted for serving for one person? If so, what is the best way to do so? And I think that we probably answered that question rather succinctly, and hopefully it was helpful to you as well, Doris. Just remember that if you are doing an assignment and you cut the ingredients in half, make sure that you state that in your summary, because we read every single word. Another question from Toki. Very good question, Toki. She wants to know tips on how to prolong the shelf life of leafy greens and other vegetables in the fridge. So for two short reasons, here I have a little stainless steel bowl. And when you take the top off, I use a coffee filter oftentimes because I don't have paper towels in my house. So here is a coffee filter. Here are my greens. These have been in here for about 4 days. Nothing is slimy. So you're going to cover it, and then you're going to put the top on it, and then you're going to invert it so that any moisture that is in the container will be absorbed by the coffee filter. I have kept greens in containers like this for up to 10 days without anything at all becoming rancid or slimy or dark green or inedible. And, you know, if you look at the prices of food, learning to save food and use it well is a very cost-effective way to maintain your plant-based kitchen. So the other thing I wanted to show you is plastic bags. You can recycle them till the 12th of never. And in this bag, I have a linen towel. And what's in it is Anyone? Any guesses from anyone? I have some romaine lettuce that I have washed and I have cleaned and I dried, and then I just keep it stored in here and use it as I need to go along. There is no guessing game in the refrigerator because you know what things are, and you never have to question whether or not something is healthy or good to use. So these are two great methods that I use for all greens and also for just about any vegetable that I keep in my refrigerator. So hopefully that's helpful. This is from Meredith. Hi, Meredith. How are you today? Meredith usually makes homemade bread. Is there any bread or similar substitute that could be considered whole food plant-based? Any ingredients that could be subbed to be more clean than unbleached AP flour? Well, I don't know if any of you have ever seen the recipe. It's on the website, Alaska from Scratch. And this woman years ago is the person who I think invented making bread in a Dutch oven. And her recipe calls for flour and water and a tablespoon of oil. So I make the bread without oil. And I take the mentality of, oh my God, I forgot to put the oil in, and things still come out. And the bread, using any kind of other flour than AP flour, I started out with a mixture of a half and then went to a quarter, and it still worked well. Rye flour, whole wheat flour. You could use an unbleached there's an unbleached whole wheat flour that you can also use that has a little bit different texture. I say, go to the flour aisle at your favorite grocery store and look at them and experiment. Even buy some in bulk so that you can maintain the quantity that you need without having to buy a big 5-pound bag of something. So go to bulk, get some flours, try it out, and visit the website that has I think it's called like No Rise Bread, but the bread comes out beautifully. I'll post some of the bread that I've made on my personal Instagram account, which is, shameless plug here, which is Char_Nolan, because during the peak of the pandemic, we ate a lot of bread. We ate garlic bread. We ate raisin bread. We had date bread. We had a lot of different bread without using all-purpose flour. Oh, and Patrick just put the website up, and I think you'll enjoy it. This is from Rhonda. How do you clean your vegetables and fruits before preparing them? Do you wash them with something special, especially berries? Well, I just use water. I know there are all kinds of solutions out in the world. I will tell you that when I travel to Central America and I eat fresh fruit, the cook where I stay cleans everything with a few drops of bleach and water. I never do that. So I just use water, but the key is not in cleaning them. The real key is drying them off really well. So whether you put it in a spinner or whether you dry it in a towel or anything else like that, but drying is probably the most key and crucial thing. So hope that's helpful to you. Oh, Toki, this is another great question. So Toki wants to start a YouTube channel using her new iPhone 14 Pro Max. I hear it has a great camera on it. And what tripod should I get to shoot top-down videos? Any other equipment needed for your YouTube? So a couple of crucial things before we even talk about equipment. One is lighting. Where will you be filming? What will the background noise be like? Patrick and I were just having this conversation just before we came on because we were talking about sound and photos and other things like that. What will the photo quality be like? It sounds as though if you have the new iPhone, that would be good. I have many tripods. One that I like the most has an articulated handle to it so that you can move around for different angles. But I did put up how to start a YouTube channel. It was from Shuttercock, and the content was very, very good. The other thing that you have to think about if you're going to do a flat lay or an overhead is what are the dishes that you will be using? Because you could make the most gorgeous, let's say, sauteed kale and bean dish. It it could look beautiful. And if you put it into a black dish, you're not going to see it well. So will you have contrasting plates? Will you use any other adornments to the table, which I don't always think are necessary, because if you want to focus on the food, you want to focus on the food and not the little candelabra. That will distract your viewer, having them think, oh, I wonder where she got that. And then they'll totally forget about the excellent content of the food that you're offering. So those would be my 3 little tips to start, and good luck with your adventure. I will tell you, my friend Jane Esselstyn has a very popular YouTube channel, and she realized long ago and early on that the content and the quality of the videos that she was making was crucial. So a friend comes and does all of her videos, and they are perfect and look wonderful. My other suggestion to you is there's a wonderful, it's Plant-Based RD is her name on Instagram. She does all of her own videos, and her content is absolutely beautiful. So go on social media and look and see what sites you like that you might like to emulate and maybe take a couple of tips from. So good luck, and let us know when you create your channel. This is from Amy F. Hi, Amy. She's wondering if Rouxbe has a suggested reading book list, and do you have any favorite culinary books to recommend? So I forgot to ask this question to Patrick, but not too long ago, I curated a list of good podcasts and also magazines and books that I think are popular, contain good content that people like to read. So if I were going to give you 2 recommendations for a podcast, I'm very fond of Rip Esselstyn's The Plant Strong podcast by Rip Esselstyn. It's very good, comes out weekly. Content is always good. And I also happen to love Rich Roll's podcast. It's very deep and has you thinking about so many things. And Main Street Vegan by Victoria Moran is another good site. But I did bring some books with me because I am all about the books here. So no shameless plug here, but I'm not a baker in real life, but I will go to Fran's book if I have to go someplace and take something. And over the holidays, I went to a potluck. Actually, we called it a plant luck because it was on a farm. And she has a recipe in here. I earmarked it. It is called Curry in a Hurry Truffles. And if you know Fran or a student in her everyday Essential Vegan Desserts program, Fran is really like a chemist. She has calculated and figured everything out in this book. So if you follow her directions and her measurements to the letter, you will make the same beautiful food that she does. So this is a really fun and delicious dessert book. One of my very favorites, my go-to, as you can tell by its condition, is the Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease Cookbook. In 2008, Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn Jr. wrote Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, which went to the New York Times bestseller. And several years later, Jane Esselstyn, his daughter, and his wife wrote this accompanying cookbook, which has really, really delicious recipes if you so choose to be whole food, plant-based, no oil, salt, oil, and sugar-free. One of my favorite books. In terms of newer cookbooks, if you follow Rouxbe Plants on Instagram at Rouxbe Plants, yesterday we featured the work of Diane Wenz, W-E-N-Z. She is a graduate of the Plant Pro course as well as Essential Vegan Desserts. And as you can see from this book, it's another one of my favorites, and I highly recommend the Gung Bao Brussels sprouts. They're a really delicious, delicious dish. And I think I didn't bring my whole book supply up here, but the Forks Over Knives magazine, which comes out quarterly, available at your local grocer, drugstore, and also at Walmart. This month, there is a feature story, about Jeremy Lalonde, who is also a graduate of the Plant Pro course as well as Essential Vegan Desserts. We're going to be featuring him on our social media in a couple of weeks. He has a great story. And back to Toki's question about good YouTube channels. In real life, Jeremy is a film producer, so he has very good kitchen-based videos that you can also learn from. So the Forks Over Knives magazines, they put out once a year a recipe book. Remember again that they are whole food, plant-based, no oil. And I think that's a good start for you. So one last one. We have another Forks Over Knives graduate who has also written a cookbook. Her name is Vicki Brett Gach, Gach. Her book is called The Plant-Based Cookbook for Life. And her book is also whole food, plant-based, no oil, SOS free. She is based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and her website is called it's called AnnArborVeganKitchen.com. Very good content. So those are a couple of things, but listen, there are like a zillion books out there. It all depends what you want. Right now, Tabitha Brown, the social media sensation, is doing very good work with her books. It's My Business, I think is what it's called. She also has a show on the Food Network. And about a year ago, she was picked up by McCormick Spices because she was using the spice blend that she created that is curry-based but salt-free. And her emphasis is looking at populations that suffer from lifestyle-related diseases like hypertension and getting people to put down their salt shakers. So there are lots and lots of people, and I'm skipping so many names. I will tell you that my first vegan cookbook was The Engine 2 Diet by Rip Esselstyn, and that book is also very tattered, but lots to learn. And one last thing about Diane's book. What I like best about Diane's book is that it's sort of like the beginning of some of the Ruby assignments, because she teaches you how to avoid the pitfalls, police your pantry, and no fuzzy vegetables. Learn how to keep your vegetables safe. So it's a good primer for anybody who is starting to embrace a whole food, plant-based diet. Excellent questions. Oh my goodness. There we go. Look at Patrick. You've been so busy. Oh, wow. Okay. Yep. Firefighters save your life. I don't think I've ever shared this with any of you, but I was really fortunate. I worked at Whole Foods Market for 10 years. And in 2009 is when I became plant-based. I initiated my very own 28-day challenge from the cookbook and thought, I'll do this for 28 days. It'll be so much fun. And on day 10, I woke up feeling so fabulous that I kind of made this little click connection that food as medicine was a real thing and not just some rhetoric from a physician named Hippocrates. Anyway, Whole Foods Market sent me to the inaugural Engine 2 immersion in Austin, Texas in 2010. And I was fortunate enough to be part of just a very exciting thing. And that's where I first met Dan Merrick, who is one of our chef instructors and the director of the plant-based program. So that book, I will say, certainly changed my life. And I'm always grateful to Rip and Jane and Ann and Dr. Esselstyn and everyone else. All right, let's see now. A lot of nice hellos here. What is the best non-toxic and non-stick frying pan? You know, whatever our grandmothers used before they started using aluminum is good. However, I did bring this ceramic pot up, and I happen to love this, and it cooks beautifully, and things don't seem to stick. And I've had this for a zillion years. It used to have a really bright, shiny, fake brass handle. And the reason why I like this is because it cooks beautifully. It's easy to clean. And I teach a lot of classes using a portable induction stovetop, and this will take to an induction stove. So you have to study well what kind of pot and pan collection will suit your kitchen best, what will fit your budget best. And I say that rather than going out and buying a full pot and pan set, get one at a time and see if you like it. And if you like the saute pan, then get yourself a a 4-quart saucepan and so forth and so on. The other thing, in my own kitchen, I have pots and pans that are 70 years old. They were my mother's Revere-ware copper bottom stainless steel pots, which still cook beautifully and evenly. So I often will encourage students, go to a thrift shop and see if there is something there that is attractive to you, that doesn't have Teflon or whatever those new coats are, called today. So, we want to cut down on waste, not just in our kitchen, but in our lives in general. So going to a thrift shop, I think, is a really good way to also embrace not being wasteful. Hope that was helpful to you, Christina. Next up, Christina, again, if we cut vegetables for fast finger food, should it be stored in water, carrots, celery, cucumber, pepper? Well, if you were let's say that you were going to use them in an hour, that's what they do in a lot of restaurants and things, but no, you want to dry them and keep them stored in containers. So sometimes, and I say sometimes, when I'm feeling motivated, or I get a weekly produce delivery of organic fruit and vegetables, so I try to get as much of it ready to use, to sort of make like a mini mise en place in my refrigerator. So I will prepare everything and then wrap it and put it in the fridge. But the answer would be no. Any experience making nut milks? Oh, hi, Meredith again. For store-bought with minimal ingredients, Dr. McGregor has mentioned Whole Foods store brand soy milk. Okay, so I did a couple of things. One, I like to show you what I do with a tablespoon of unsalted almond butter and a 8-ounce container or 240 cc's of water. And I put it in this little thing here and I blend it. This is one of those mini blenders this is from the people who make the Onana machine, but you can see it makes a beautiful, beautiful almond milk. There's no salt in it, there's no sugar, and there's no funny gels or anything like that. It's very reasonable to make. You can keep it up to 5 days, stored well, covered top, et cetera, but really and truthfully, if you're going to use it in your breakfast cereal and maybe your morning tea or your coffee or whatever, it takes 2 seconds to make. If you have a little bit of a sweet tooth, you can add a date. I prefer a date to maple syrup just because fiber is always a good thing. You want to remove the pit and then break this up. You might want to, because the blades on this is not so strong, I would soak this in warm water for like 2 or 3 minutes just to sort of break the skin down a little bit. But that's the best thing. That this is what I do. But I also had this in my pantry, the original champions of mighty soy milk, Silk Soy. And I think they've been around since the 12th of never. The ingredient list is organic soy milk, vitamin and mineral blend, and then they add salt. So there is 75 milligrams of salt in this. Why does it have to have salt? Who knows? So start out making your almond butter milk. Let us know what you think. It's cost effective. You can do it with hemp seeds. You can do it with lots and lots of other things, but almond milk is my preferred milk. So try making your own. I think that's the best thing to do. And you do not need to go and get a nut machine. If you have a high-speed blender like a Vitamix or Blendtec or something, that also makes really, really good milk. You may have to strain it in a nut bag or a double mesh strainer. Either one of those will work well for you, but cost effectiveness and the nutrition value, I think, is much better than anything you'll get commercially. Hope that helped, Meredith. You and that bread, you're going to have a great meal. Or you could make French toast. This is from Marydale. Hi, when we all need the pastas, when will we need the spatzoli and dehydrator machines? Can you recommend what types are best, please? So you might want to put out an all points bulletin to your friends and see if anyone has a pasta machine. I remember recently making spatzoli for an assignment, and I just used a colander, and it worked out perfectly. As for the food dehydrator, it's funny that you would ask that because I borrowed a food dehydrator from a friend for that assignment because I wasn't sure if I would ever use it again. And then I had such success that I went and bought a second-hand food dehydrator and used it for about 20 minutes, making beautiful dried tomatoes, by the way. And now it's in my basement and I don't use it. So I think that you might want to see about borrowing them first. I will say this, if you're going to go buy a Ronco, and there really is a Ronco food dehydrator, they take a really, really long time. Also, look into the settings on your oven and see if a convection oven will allow you to have that low temp so that you could actually dehydrate in your oven. So those are just things to think about, but check with your friends. Hope that was helpful to you. This is from Kathy. See, for the divided silicone storage container you showed us for freezing, what type of lid or cover do you use? Some of them that I have actual covers on them. I will cover them in parchment paper, and then I will put them in a plastic bag in the freezer. So that's what works best. At all costs, I try to avoid using aluminum in everything. So you can use parchment paper in a plastic bag, and that would work well. But some do come with tops. What are the best containers to freeze tomato sauce and sauces? Well, we'll go back to something like the divided containers. And, they come in 8-ounce sizes, so you could use that. And then when you're ready to use them, you can pop them out. I know a lot of people who still love using Tupperware. They're still in business. Tupperware is also sold on Amazon, believe it or not. I am also a fan of using glass jars. And if you are sensitive to metal, I will use, again, a coffee filter to create a barrier between the metal and the food content. But I love jars. I know some people will freeze in jars. I do not. But anything that is airtight and anything that will defrost quickly. Oh, Nancy P., I love this question so much. How do you get enough protein each day being on a plant-based diet? So, if and I say this with all the love in my heart, if I had a nickel for every time someone asked me this question, I would be living in Capri or somewhere else like that. So what I did was I checked my food journal from yesterday, and we should probably have around 30 grams of protein a day. So I'm going to show you just a couple of things that stood out. I had 2 cups of broccoli. That was 8.4 grams. I had a serving of old-fashioned oats. Never eat the instant, please. There was 6 grams of protein in that. I had a can of garbanzo beans. I used a cup in a beautiful salad that I made, and the cup of garbanzo beans had 39 grams of protein. And I had a Japanese sweet potato, which had 4 grams of protein. So looking quickly at the math, I was well over 50 grams of protein yesterday. So be mindful that all vegetables contain protein. Beans are a wonderful source of protein. You can get that, making veggie burgers, making soups, lots of other things. It's not that you're just going to sit there and eat a garbanzo bean one at a time and get bored with what you eat. But I personally find beans to be the most inventive plant-based source of protein, because you can make a hummus, you can make dessert. I just made there's a famous faux Nutella recipe going on the internet these days that you make with dates and garbanzo beans and vanilla. I like to throw in a little cinnamon just to take that kind of beany taste away. But there is protein in everything on a plant-based diet. And I do want to just say this. On a personal level, a friend of mine who has been whole food, plant-based no oil for many, many years, thought that it would be, what difference would it make if they were to become a vegan? And they began eating what I like to call vegan convenience foods. And those are pre-made burgers and the cauliflower bites that are deeply fried and other things like that. And while most of his blood values stayed the same, he developed type 2 diabetes. So my point in this is that staying as close to the ground as you can and staying away from factory-made food is probably the best way to go. So keep eating those veggies, keep eating those beans, and go, 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 Nancy. That was a great question, by the way. This is from Ken J. Hi, Chef Char. Hey, Ken. With great enthusiasm, I enrolled in the Soup Basics course. The further I went, the more disappointed I became with the amount of salt and oil used. Example, 1/4 cup butter in leek and potato soup. Are there workarounds for this? Well, remember a couple of minutes ago when I told you that I have the, I forgot to put it in mentality when making recipes that call for oil and salt and things like that. So I would first look at the sodium and think that what would be some good substitutes. Mrs. Dash is a great kitchen standby, and now she has like 10 different varieties of all kinds of really good concoctions. Lemon is a great way to add flavor. Adding a couple of drops of vinegar as well. Mustard is another thing. I think, I'm not familiar with Soup Basics. It sounds to me that you were looking more for something that was along the forks over knives way, but I'm encouraging you to plow through the course and omit the oil. You can water saute, you can dry saute. Dry saute is one of the methods discussed in both Forks Over Knives and the Plant Pro course, and it's where you learn to saute, creating the end result of something being caramelized and delicious without using oil. And water saute is used by many plant-based chefs. Personally, myself, I find that when you use too much water with water saute, that your vegetables have a steamy flavor to them rather than a saute. So those would be my basic suggestions, Ken. And if you have any questions, you can always feel free to email me at char@rouxbe.com. I still think if you use a salt substitute, white pepper, a little bit of lemon is still going to come out delicious. Thanks so much for your question. I appreciate it. This is from Marie L. How do I make homemade mayo that actually tastes good? Well, Marie, my own personal motto is hummus is the new mayo. So if I make the Rouxbe tuna-less salad, instead of using the cashew creme that they suggest, I will use hummus. There are many recipes out there. I would not use the commercial one because if you read the ingredient list, it goes back to having recipes that have some artificial ingredients, or maybe the salt is too much. Hummus is so easy to make. It's so economical, and you can season it in many different ways. Also, just one last thing about hummus. When I make hummus, I will use my Vitamix, and then at the end, after things have mixed, I throw in an ice cube, and then I put it back on and whiz it away. And the reason being is that when the ice is breaking down, it helps to break down the texture of the garbanzo bean mixture and makes it smoother, and it adds a little bit of liquid, just exactly what you need for the right texture. So that's just a little kitchen tip from my house to yours. And let us know how you make out, Marie, but try and avoid the commercial mayo. I mean, here's the thing. When you see major food brands jumping on the quote, quote, plant-based bandwagon, I mean, I even saw detergent on the cleaning aisle at the grocery store with the words plant-based on it. And the thing of it is that you want to use a soap, not a detergent, because detergents have harmful chemicals in them. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. What flour, this is from Kathy H. What flour can she use other than AP, which we know stands for all purpose, to make egg and oil-free pasta? Well, I think I forgot to send this to Patrick, but I make pasta without egg and oil, and it's so good. And all it is a cup of, I use a gluten-free double O flour, which is pasta flour, and a packed cup of spinach. There it is. Okay, good. I did send it to him. And you just put it in your food processor, and then magically it becomes dough, and you don't even have to roll it out, and you use scissors to cut little pieces of pasta that cook magically in like 2 minutes, and it is the best pasta I have ever had. Here's my thing. Oftentimes, people spend so much time wanting to create flavors and tastes and sensations of things that they knew in their former non-plant lives. I say it's time for us to develop mainstays in our kitchens that embrace how we are working a whole food plant-based diet into our lives. And this pasta recipe is so delicious. And if you use the Rouxbe marinara sauce recipe, which is one of my favorites, totally delicious. And someone had asked about making pizza, and I did include the Rouxbe pizza dough recipe, which is very good. I will also say there are 2 other things that you can do if you're looking for a little bit of pizza. One is Trader Joe's has a very good pizza dough recipe that's near where they keep their deli stuff. And they used to have a whole wheat pizza dough, but they discontinued it. And we'll never be bringing it back because it didn't sell well. And then the Plant Strong Foods by Rip Esselstyn. He has a really delicious oil-free whole wheat pasta dough that I absolutely love. And you can use it to make dessert pies with, meaning like a flat apple pizza, so to speak. And several weeks ago, I made some bruschetta with it and took it to an outing at this farm where I did volunteer work for the summer, and everyone loved it. It's very, very good. Okay, I'm trying to make a high-protein, gluten-free bread. I have found a recipe with lentils instead of flour, but it really isn't very tasty or attractive. I am considering adding a little oat flour to give it rise and flavor. Well, Kathy, I'm a basic rustic baker, and I have cooked with lentil, and it is very heavy, just like garbanzo bean flour is also very heavy. So I guess I'm curious to know why you want a high-protein, gluten-free bread. That would be curious to me. I think it's going to take experimentation on your part, but lentil flour is very, very dense. If you're going to add oat flour to it, so here's something interesting. I make my own oat flour in the Vitamix just because it's easy. And you don't want to overmix it because then you get sort of like just a very heavy, not good looking flour. But I'll use their name. Quaker Oats is making oat flour. And I did try it and I didn't like it at all because it was much too silky and much too thin. And they gave you conversions on the back, which I did try to follow. So I think this is going to be experimentation for you. And, maybe you can make the bread to the best that you like it and then fill it with delicious vegetables and maybe a wonderful veggie burger and get your protein from that. But it sounds to me like you might have to do some experimenting in the kitchen. I would suggest going to the Bob's Red Mill gluten-free section on his website and see if there are any tips that they can offer to you. By the way, check out Bob's New Year's video on Instagram. It's just delightful and heartwarming and just such a lovely man. This is from Jeffrey A. Where do I shop for groceries? Well, it's interesting that you would ask that question because I happen to love a German grocery store here on the East Coast of the United States called Lidl. And right now, these original crisp breads are one of my favorite foods. And you might say that Lidl is sort of like a little bit like Aldi. But I get a produce delivery to my house every week from a local delivery service here in Philadelphia. I like going to Trader Joe's, but will only go at 8 o'clock in the morning when they first open. I sometimes will go to Whole Foods. There's a grocery store here in the area called Mom's Organic Market. But when I teach classes, I will buy the groceries in the grocery store of the community where I'm teaching. So there is also something called the grocery store outlet, which is worth checking out. But right now, Lidl is my go-to. They have organic vegetables. They have regular vegetables, and they have exactly what I need for the type of food that I buy for myself and my family. Good question. Oh, we're back to the mushrooms. Yay. This is from Jennifer K. Hi, Jennifer. I gave out a yay because over the summer I did a magazine article for Veg World magazine and spent the day at a mushroom farm and loved it so much. So how about storing mushrooms in the fridge? Unfortunately, my refrigerator has a lot of humidity, and even though I've tried putting them in a paper bag with a paper towel, I can't seem to preserve them for long. Any suggestions? Well, you're doing everything right with your using paper bags, which is the recommended source. The temperature of your refrigerator really has a lot to do with it. If I remember from interviewing the mushroom farmer, something like 34 degrees is the suggested temperature for them. I buy mushrooms loosely. I don't buy them in packages. I store them in you can store them in a paper bag or a towel like I use for the romaine lettuce. And I also suggest not buying them in too much quantity. You can, if you want to, you could saute them and then freeze them. And I'm not sure if you're using them in soups or as a side dish, but what you're doing is right. I would check the temperature of your refrigerator by actually putting a food thermometer in your refrigerator in the back to see what the temperature is like. Because sometimes we don't always know the exact temperatures of our ovens or our refrigerators. So that might be helpful. Very good question. This is from Yadra. Hello, any suggestions for making salad dressings without oil? So in Rouxbe and the Plant Pro, there are some wonderful oil-free salad dressings. The Dijon vinaigrette rings a bell, most importantly, the balsamic vinaigrette. One of the things that I like to do to my salad dressings is to add a little bit of either flax meal or a little bit of chia and let it set, and then I'll put it into a little blender so that it gets a little thickness or a little gelatinous-like context to it. So, but that's a great, by the way, when you're looking for a recipe, that's on Rouxbe. So let's say I wanted to look for a baked potato recipe. I would go Rouxbe, baked potato, and then bibbidi-boo. Right on your screen will be 4 or 5 recipes directly from Rouxbe that you can look into. So if you went Rouxbe, oil-free dressings, all of those dressings would pop up. And I have to say, they're all really, really delicious. The chipotle dressing is very, very good, especially if you're having something Tex-Mexy or making chili or something like that. Hope that helps. This is from Diana C. I would like to mill my own flour from whole grains for bread making. Would I have to adjust the recipe amounts for doing this? I would suggest to sift the flour before you use it. And if the quantities come out to be the same, then I think you're going to be okay. I don't know what you're using whether you're using a mill that you have or whether you're using the dry container from your Vitamix. But I always sift my flours before I use them. Would love to see your bread too. Sounds delicious. This is from Anna R. Is there any type of olive oil that is healthy for you? If not, what's the best substitute? Oh, Anna, this is, someday there's going to be a debate show called Oil or No Oil. So if you look at some of the work of people like Dr. Esselstyn and others after him, they say no oil, especially for people who have severe heart disease or for people who want to prevent any heart disease. So I don't cook with oil. And in my salad dressings, I get as creative as I can. If Dr. Esselstyn were part of this interview, he would say no oil. So I'm not even going to give any suggestions for what might be others to use, but there is not really, in my opinion, a best substitute. If you talk to some of the other chef instructors, they might be able to answer that question better for you. Also, if you read any of the work by Jeff Novick, the registered dietitian, Jeff, Novick, will always tell you that no oil is the best oil. This is from Terry S. Why isn't nutrition info provided in recipes? Also, my partner is very lean but extremely active, and the serving sizes seem too small for him. I was hoping to use caloric info to adjust recipe sizes for his high activity level. So I'll start out to answer the question, why isn't there nutrition info provided in the recipes? I'm not sure of that, but if you look at a lot of the experts who are writing plant-based cookbooks, that information is not included because the foods that you're eating are healthy and nutritious as they are. That's the first part of the question. Excuse me. And if the serving sizes are too small, I would make the serving sizes bigger quite simply. In terms of the caloric information, many schools of thought are calories in, calories out. If you follow a whole food plant-based diet and you're not eating processed foods, the focus on vegetables, legumes, beans, grains, and legumes, grains, and beans, those are very clean ingredients. So I'm not sure that I've answered the question the way that you want. But I think that if you think there aren't enough calories, you could add potatoes, you could add brown rice, you could add farro, you could add quinoa, which, as you know, is a perfect food because it contains all of the essential 9 amino acids. It's a perfect protein. So I would also look at some of the information on Rip Esselstyn's site because, as you know, he was a triathlete and remains very athletic and often addresses this topic. So great question, Terry. Thank you very much. Oh, this is from Ellie S. Very bored of beans and rice. Newly diagnosed celiac, gluten-free, whole food, plant-based, low-fat, no process. Food type 1 diabetic, organic, trying to verify low heavy metals, which I find, okay. And she is finding that in unexpected, like kale stems and chocolate and ketchup. Okay. These questions might be best answered by a registered dietitian who specializes in some of the conditions that you have mentioned. I will answer it to the best of my ability and say that, first of all, I'm looking at the kale stems. When we eat kale, we always strip the kale from the main vein so that you're only getting the nutrients from the leafy green leaves. So that might be something helpful to you. If you are a type 1 diabetic, I'm hoping that you are already working with a registered dietitian who specializes in that condition. On the internet, there's a wonderful, wonderful person to follow. She's called Gluten Free Diva. She's on Instagram. She does tutorials every day. And I believe that she might be a really resourceful person for you to follow. And yeah, it's really easy to get bored of beans and rice. But you can have them in the forms of a burger, a casserole, a soup. You can have them in forms of dips and other things. I have a 12-year-old niece who is a type 1 diabetic, so I'm familiar with how you have to monitor your food. But I hope that we've given you a little fodder to answer your questions, and I wish you well on your food endeavor. Sounds like you have a good handle and you know what you're doing. And Patrick just posted Gluten Free Diva. She's really good and she's very nice. What are your thoughts on Colima salt? Oh, Anna, you're back to a question about salt again, which I don't use. If I want to get a salty flavor in my food, I will use a low sodium tamari. And now the Sanjay company has different values. You can get 25%, 50%, 75%, but I don't use salt in my cooking for the reasons that is stated in a lot of the literature. So salt is a no-no in the way that I live my own life. And, when I was a student at Rouxbe, I began every assignment, this is an SOS-free recipe. And I did the whole program that way and had it, with asterisks and capital letters and things like that. And there are ways to still make food taste nutritious and delicious. So thanks, Anna. This is from Jennifer. Will the comments and links be available with the replay? Hard to keep up with them. I'm having a hard time too, but the answer is yes. That's a very good question. I have a lot of students who will say, oh, I wasn't able to catch the live event, but I did ask a question and I was so glad that it got answered. So we do go through a lot of information in a relatively short period of time. And while this event is slotted for an hour, Patrick and I decided beforehand that we would stay a little extra to make sure that everybody's questions got answered. This is from Ruth O. She's saying hello from Berlin. Ruth, you probably shop at Lidl. We were just talking about how much I love shopping at Lidl and buying so many of their nutrient-dense products that are made in Germany, like these delicious crisp breads. So welcome, Ruth, and I hope that you're having a very good day. What is your whole food plant-based sweetener of choice? Michelle, that is a really great question. So first I have to say that maybe 20 years ago, I was a person who would have a big cup of coffee with lots of half and half and maybe 3 or 4 packets of sugar. So that sugar and salt are acquired tastes. And sometimes I will taste something and go, oh my God, this is so sweet. And it might have 1 date in it. So my favorite sweetener, I was talking to a friend today who's a nutritionist, and we were talking about sweeteners because there are some people who will say, and it's sugar-free, but it's sweetened with date sugar or maple sugar. What they really mean is it's unrefined. It's unrefined sugar. It's refined sugar-free. So I like dates. I like a little drop of maple syrup. If I do drink coffee, I drink it black, or I'll put a little bit of that delicious almond milk in it. I think that you have to remember that some of the sources of plant-based sweeteners, like date sugar, maple sugar, et cetera, coconut sugar, all have calories in them. So I don't know if the caloric responsibility is something that you focus on. There are other things out there, but I'm not big on sweetness. When I do bake, I will use maple syrup Some people will say, oh, it's so processed, but it gives you the flavor that you want. And I taught a cooking class last month in person, and I used maple syrup, and the people were surprised that it tasted as sweet as it did without having gobs and gobs of sugar in it. So anyway, very good question. Very good question. And I think, I know next month, next week, rather, Fran Costigan is doing one on plant milks, but there is a Rouxbe tape, YouTube tape about Fran talking about sugar and sugar alternatives, and that might be a great thing for you to tune into. This is from Terry S. Where can we find that technique for making the nut milk? The one where I make it in the blender. Maybe Patrick can look for it, but it's a tablespoon of unsweetened, unsalted almond butter, 8 ounces of warm water, and that's it. You just mix it in the little blender for about a minute, and then it comes out. So Patrick found one here on Rouxbe, and there you go. Courtney. Hello, Courtney. Am I the only one confused as to how to start the course? I'm not sure what exactly that you are referring to. The pantry, prepping your pantry is a great way to get started. Maybe looking over the list of things that you need to have in the kitchen. You can always connect with Dee in Student Services, who can answer. She can answer any question. If there was a quiz show called What's on Rouxbe, Dee would be your go-to, and she's one of the nicest people ever. But if you want to ask another question, Courtney, to be more specific, I'm happy to answer it. I think looking back at my own experience all those many years ago, I couldn't wait to get started because a part of me thought that maybe it would just be one of the best things I could do. And as it turns out, I think I was right. So ask another question and we can answer it more specifically. Back to Kathy C. Answer to your questions, re gluten-free bread. I eat gluten-free because it has helped my, arthritis, joint, and pain considerably. I'm trying to get more protein in my diet as most gluten-free bread is low in protein. So, I know many people with both rheumatoid and osteoarthritis, and laying off the wheat is certainly very, very helpful. We spoke earlier about how much protein there is in things like vegetables, oats, garbanzo beans, potatoes, and other things like that. So it's very funny that you would also mention that, Kathy, because I do know that on the rare occasion that I would maybe have like a vegetable pizza or something, the next day when I wake up, my arthritic bones are difficult to manage. So I understand that. But start looking at labels of vegetables and things like that, because there's lots of protein in all of those vegetables. And thanks for writing back. I really appreciate that. This is from Michelle P. Do I have a favorite go-to bedtime snack for when the cravings hit at night? I don't. I try to not eat after 8 o'clock just so that I can sleep better. And I will have a cup of like sleepy time tea. And in the Engine 2 book, one of my favorite recipes is called Mighty Muffins. It's an oat-based muffin made, with bananas and apples and everything else like that. And I make them in mini muffin tins and then put them in the freezer. If I'm really hungry or think I'm hungry, I might have 1 or 2 of those, and they certainly help to squelch any hunger that I might have. I don't want to eat too much. Oh, this is funny. One time, there was some leftover kale salad from dinner, and it was around 9 o'clock, and I was like, oh, this will be like horrible tomorrow. I'm going to eat it now. And I'm not kidding. I stayed up till like 2 o'clock in the morning because all of the those nutrient-dense cells of that kale kept me awake. So I learned long ago, don't eat the kale. Now I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Is it Yahia? He wants to be a professional chef at the age of 30. Is that too late? Well, I say embrace it and do it, because you might have 4 or 5 different careers by the time you're 50 or 60. So do it, enjoy it, love what you do. And when we love what we do, we never feel as though we work. So that is a great question. And I hope that we'll see much of your work in the queue as we begin to grade more and more. Oh, hi, Toki again. I see lots of people share that recipes online. Is it best to list ingredients only when they have a blog or cookbook to link back to the full recipe? Your thoughts on starting a food blog for profit? Well, before you start that food blog for profit, make sure that you have already established yourself as an LLC and that you have all of your business paperwork, ID numbers, et cetera, in order, so that you are organized for the business side of what you do. In terms of sharing recipes, find 5 or 6 blogs or websites that you like and see how people lay out, how they like their recipes. What's the easiest way to write a recipe? You don't want to make things too complex, but find out what you like to do. It sounds, Toki, like you're going with you've got your YouTube station, and then you're going to channel, and then you're going to make a blog. This sounds all very, very exciting. So I'm excited to see what you have in store. This is from Lynn M. How can you make a whole wheat flour roux with a minimum amount of olive oil? Well, I make a slurry, and a slurry is essentially a little bit of flour and a little bit of water, and it's blended well. And that's what I use to add to soups, or even if I'm making something that might be of a cheesy texture, sometimes I will use cornstarch to that, but you don't need to have the oil. And try it, and you're going to see how well making a slurry will work for you. Very good question. This is from Ann S. Over the years, what changes or trends have you seen in the interest in plant-based cooking and nutrition? What jobs do you see whole food plant-based professionals filling in the future? So this is a great question. And, I've known people who have been plant-based for 30 and 40 years, some for their entire lives. And in the 13 years that I have been following a whole food plant-based way of living, even back 13 years ago, there was like 2 kinds of plant milk. There were no processed or packaged foods, which I avoid anyway. There were like 2 types of tofu. So there's been a whole explosion in terms of food manufacturing, and in terms of positions working as a professional. If for those of you who have already completed the hospital menu assignment, one of the things that I always say is that hospitals need to hire a plant-based chef to come in and help revitalize the hospital menu, because I look at some of the menus and am astounded by what is being fed in many hospitals, especially as being plant-based, especially when people are being treated inpatient for lifestyle-related diseases, autoimmune diseases and such. And we do know that food as medicine is a very helpful thing. So in terms of professional jobs, I think a lot of that comes from your own desire to meet your passion and do what you love. It's not like you're going to open up, or that anyone is going to open up the newspaper and see wanted whole food plant-based dietitian or whatever. Jobs are out there. You have to find them. I think positions will grow exponentially, and other areas that you'll find them is in the restaurant world, because the growth of plant-based restaurants here in Philadelphia, 15 years ago, there were like 2 vegan restaurants, and now two seem to be opening every month. There are restaurants where you can, work the line, as they say. There are teaching positions in clinics and other places like that. I teach a lot. I teach in the community a lot, and a lot of what you do is based on your passion and what you love to do. So I say that, yes, there are jobs available. Another growing field is social media. Social media specifically needs to have a branch for plant-based. And if you go through a lot of plant-based sites, you can tell that they've either hired, the Jane Doe company to work for them, or that the person who's monitoring and responding to is somebody who understands the plant-based lifestyle. So I will say this, because people always say to me, why did you go to Rouxbe? Well, I have always been interested in food and cooking. I grew up in a family restaurant. I worked at a place like Whole Foods for many, many years. When I was a school teacher, my math lessons were in the kitchen, because I figured that was the easiest way to teach math to children. And I wanted to have a credential attached to my name, so that when people would say, well, where did you go to school? I could say, well, I went to the Rouxbe online cooking school. And then they say, you went to an online cooking school? And then I share from my heart what I learned. And I have to say that, I think the feedback that my colleagues and I provide, I'm speaking for myself. When I was a student, I read every single line in the feedback, whether I got 100 or whether I got an 88, it's still something that I found is a great learning experience. And they were always right about what they saw in the photos, and that's why photos are so important in every assignment. So, Anne, that was the best question. Ken J is back. Hi, Ken. I'm wondering, why would one make a mushroom stock if it were to cost up to 4 times more than off-the-shelf stock? I can answer that in a couple of ways. First of all, if you're not using the stems, and if you've cleaned the gills, because you don't like the gills in what you eat, so you've got the stems and you've got the gills, and then the other part that you can use to make your mushroom stock. And then if you look at the sodium level of that stock, more than likely it's going to have about 450 milligrams of sodium in 1 cup. And by my math, that comes out to be 1/4 of a teaspoon. So if you are somebody, as you stated earlier, who is becoming aware of sodium levels in food, making your own mushroom stock is the best way to go. I often shop at H Mart, back to Jeffrey's question, and H Mart is the largest Asian grocery chain in the world, and sometimes they'll have a really good deal on dried mushrooms, so I will use some of those to also make a mushroom stock. But it's mostly the stock, and you can make a really good mushroom stock from stems and gills. Hope that helps, Ken. This is from Kate. Is there a way to speed up the soaking process for nuts or grains? Well, what I do, I'm laughing because when I was like a teenager and I would make Jell-O, which I would never make today, I would speed it up by using ice cubes, because I'm so impatient, or I can be impatient. So what you want to do is I cover them with boiling water, put them in a bowl, pour some boiling water over it, cover it, and wait 10 minutes, and you've got a beautiful nut. But I also would encourage you to, after you strain them, to also pat them dry with a towel, so that that fat stays in there. Hope that helps. This is from Miranda T. Do you recommend a particular brand of refrigerator and/or freezer glass storage containers? Are there brands that have better lids that don't leak? One thing that never leaks is a jar. And, I have some pretty ball jars, but I also have a big collection of these almond butter jars, because they store really well. You can also, if you don't like metal, you can get plastic tops from Amazon, made by Ball. I think it's mainly what you like. Right now, I should have brought them up. I have a series of Cuisinart glass bottom containers that have a bamboo top, and they vacuum seal, and they're really, really good. So I think it's what you like. Shop around, look on Amazon, go to a brick and mortar and see if there's something that suits your fancy. This is from Melissa H. Hi, Melissa. I know very little about plant-based cooking. Looking forward to learning. And Melissa, that's just what you will do. You're going to have a lot of fun, and you get to eat your homework, as I like to say. And it's really nice to see how friends and family become involved in the process. I'll read a summary from a student that will say, so I invited my neighbors over to try the no oil saute mushrooms, and we put them on crostini, and they were delicious. So I think you'll enjoy that because it is a very engaging program as well. So thank you so much for being here today. This is from Angelica. How do you cook a noodle dish and keep it looking glossy after it's cooked when cooking without oil? Mine always looks dry. So I don't know if you're cooking the dish covered or uncovered, which will make a difference. But one thing that I have done when I want to make something look good visually for the table is I have like a zillion spray bottles, and I'll fill it with a stock or something like that and just spray it with a little bit of that vegetable stock, and it will give it a little bit more flavor. And it's not going to make it shiny like oil would be, but it will give it a little bit of a glisten, and it's better for you too. So very good question. Toki is back again. Can you share how to take Instagram-worthy photos? Any suggestions on making an IG page look cohesive? Well, there are a couple of things. If you're going to use your phone, having one of these phone lamps is very, very helpful. Good lighting, first of all, for your photos is very important. And you want to show the nooks and crannies of your food. You want them to be plated and garnished well. I think that you have to think about what your theme will be in terms of, is it going to be about you or is it going to be about food? Will it have reflective thoughts? Will you have recipes on it? So I think, again, it's fun to go through other Instagram sites. Will you be making stories? Will you be doing reels? One of the nice things about using reels is that you can do a voiceover. So what will your voice sound like? There are so many things to consider, but most of all, it should be a reflection of you and what you like to do. And that's how you develop the theme for what you want to do and make it look cohesive. So that would be my easy recommendation. It sounds to me like, Toki, you have everything already in order and you know what you want to do, and that's so exciting. So I would say that if you're going to make beautiful food, tag at Rouxbe Plants, because we love seeing what students are doing, and we also love to share student work on our own Instagram pages. So I'm going to keep an eye out for you. All righty. Thanks, Toki. This is from Peggy B. I made Jeremy's mushroom leek casserole for New Year's brunch. I prepped everything ahead, but still waited until the next morning to add the phyllo dough and bake it. Could I add phyllo the day before? By the way, it was delicious. Were you worried about the phyllo dough becoming too soggy? If this worked for you, then I don't see why it wouldn't be Peggy's way of making the mushroom leek casserole. I've not made the dish, but phyllo dough can get very dry, and if it wasn't covered well. So I think the technique that you used did a great job. In terms of time, it doesn't really put too much time into it. So glad the recipe worked out for you. I'm thinking that Peggy B must be Peggy Bird, and if it's you, Peggy Bird is one of my waste not warriors. And she has been in discussion with Wegmans for being better stewards of the environment. And I do know that now Wegmans, I was in Wegmans last week, Peggy, and when I saw that they no longer are using plastic bags, in my heart, I gave full credit to you. So thanks for being the warrior that you are with Wegmans and other foods. Right now, Peggy and I are trying to find ways to convince blueberry and strawberry growers that they can use a cardboard container that's friendly to the earth rather than the plastic ones that we all know. So anyway, Peggy, it's great to see you. This is from ANS. In sauteing in a stainless steel pan, I can't seem to get the temperature right. Water droplets either all scatter or it stays just in one spot and dissipates. I've tried turning it down, but still seems to do the same. So your pan is heated already to the temperature that you like. I should have brought it upstairs, but one of the things that I've been having a lot of fun with is an infrared thermometer. And I check the temperature of everything. I'm not sure what the answer to that is, Peggy, but it sounds to me, if they're scattering, it might be too hot. But I can't answer the question, but as long as you're cooking without oil, I think that's the main event. So thanks for asking. And we're going to have a drum roll. We have one last question from Susan N. She has an electric stovetop and she wants to get a wok. Any recommendations? When you say electric, you mean like the coil ones, or do you mean like a glass? I'm not sure by the question. I just wanted to make sure that I had a stainless steel wok, and I wanted to have a wok that did not have a coating on it. So I'm thinking that you must have an electric stove and you're wondering about where the crown will go, where the base will go, so that it doesn't fall through the electric. I don't know the answer to the question. I don't know. I know sometimes I have worked with students who have used an electric wok, one that you plug in, but it's hard to find them without Teflon coating. So I'm going to look. I'm going to go look because, or I'm going to call and ask a friend of mine who has a wok and an electric stove. Great. These were the best questions. My goodness. I said to Patrick earlier today, well, I think it's probably going to be a really slow day today. And he's, oh, no. Open your email. There are a lot of questions. And for new students, welcome aboard. This is a terrific learning experience. If you read yesterday's Instagram where we highlighted Diane Wenz, one of the things she said is have fun and don't worry about your grade. The grade is just feedback, and I know that my colleagues and I really spend a lot of time making certain that the feedback that's given is, on point and ready to certainly serve and help you. So with that, Happy New Year, one and all. And thanks again to Patrick for loading up so many websites for everyone today. And Happy New Year, and start sending in your assignments. Bye for now from Philadelphia.